Welcome back to the Charlotte Hornets MyNBA series. Today is the first part of our prospect outlook so far for this year's draft. I haven't done it. I intend to have them as standalone episodes, 10 to 15-minute episodes like this one in future seasons as well, where I'll just kind of go over a preview of all the top prospects in the draft and see where the Hornets stand. Now, unfortunately, as of right now, like I said last episode, the trade deadline went by for whatever reason, and we currently do not own a first-round pick because the Spurs have everybody's first-round pick. They have the Bulls. They have the Hawks' first-round pick. They have their own first-round pick. They currently have our first-round pick. They have a lot of first-round picks. But don't get me wrong. When the draft and offseason comes around, first thing we're doing is making a trade to get into that first round of the NBA draft, because yes, we do probably have a second round pick, I would imagine somewhere, way down here at number 42, but I'm just not gonna let a draft go by without getting a first round pick, especially when we have tradable contracts. We've got guys like Grant Williams on a 3-year deal who I like. He's played all right for us, but at 26 years old, he's going to have some value to some team there. Cody Martin is another guy I wouldn't mind throwing into a trade there, just because I do think that these guys are going to have some sort of value. Now, before we get into the prospect outlook, I do want to get into something real quick. Next game we play, which will be next episode, this is a standalone one, I'm going to try and get Kyle Boswell some playing time. He's got a good three-point shot. I like what he can bring to the table. He's a good passer. He's an okay perimeter defender. I think he's probably going to be a little bit better than Nick Smith Jr. as far as all of that goes. So I want to try and get Kyle Boswell in there and get him some playing time. And we may potentially see PJ Hall, just because right now we're on the outskirts. We are currently standing at the 8th seed. We're above Brooklyn. We're above the Celtics, a couple other teams by a few games. So I think we have some good footing, and I want to get our young guys some playing time, so I think it's important that we're going to be able to obviously not win a championship this year. That is not in the question, but I think it's important that we get these young guys some experience here, especially early on when we have the opportunity to, just like I decided to do with Bryce McGoins and JT Thor, two guys that weren't playing all that much. I want to get them on the floor just a little bit more, even if that means, having a tougher stretch down here. Next episode, we will be taking on the Cavaliers. So as you can see, this team is stringing together some wins. We are currently above 500. I don't know if you can believe it. We are currently at 33-31, sitting at the 8th seed. So we are 4 games ahead, actually more than 4 games ahead. We're 4.5 or so ahead of the Boston Celtics, and the Nets have completely fallen out of the play-in tournament now. So as of right now, I'm liking where this team is standing. Obviously, we're not competitors. We're not going to win a championship right this year, but it is improvement if we can make the play-in tournament. And Brandon Miller is not playing well. He's not taking nearly as many shots as I would like him to take, so that potentially means that they have his tendency down. I would like to go and see exactly tendency view. Yeah, they do have his shot tendency pretty low. But it's not like insanely low. We're definitely going to send that up some more because I want him to get more touches. I want him to get more shots up because he is undoubtedly our second best player. And I really, really want to see Brandon Miller develop as the second star alongside LaMelo Ball. If we look at the rookies so far, Stephon Castle is leading the way in points per game. He is also having a pretty good year in rebounds per game, especially for a point guard, basically point guard shooting guard hybrid for 4.5 rebounds. That is pretty good, I will say. He's also 4th in assist. As you can see, Nikola Topic is not getting much starting minutes, but he's having some good solid minutes off the bench for the Trailblazers there. Steals wise, Cassell is up there as well at number 5. Blocks, obviously he's not going to be up there. Let's see about field goal percentage. That's kind of skewed towards the guys that don't really play all that much. Kel Ware is a guy that I was interested in, but he's currently backing up for the Warriors. And as far as league leaders go, before we get into our first prospect scouting report, Luka is actually second to Jalen Brunson, the former Maverick teammate there, is number 1 in points per game. Rebounds per game is going to go to Jokic with 13.5. Sabonis has 12.5, so that one's pretty wide stretch there for Jokic. Now, Halliburton and Doncic are tied for assists per game. Third is Trae Young, steals per game. Paul George leading the way. Jared Vanderbilt is a close second. Alonzo LaMelo Ball is actually a close third, so that's impressive to see from LaMelo. Blocks, AD, Wembanyama, Chet Holmgren, all the usual suspects. Turnovers, let's see. Luka leading the way. LaMelo is up there as well. Fouls per game, we don't really care about that. Who's leading the league in shooting percentage? Man, field goal percentage is led by Zion Williamson, and he's shooting 16 times a game, so that's very, very impressive. Three-point percentage is led by Klay Thompson, the Splash Bro, after having a disappointing season last year. Then you got Corey Kispert, Desmond Bane, Luke Kennard, who has not qualified for any of these statistics, but he does qualify for three-point percentage somehow. That's kind of confusing. And then Paul George is there as well, who's averaging the most attempts. You've got Dame Dollar with 10.2, and he's shooting well. 40% from the field is pretty good. Grayson Allen leads the way from the free throw line. And yeah, that is where the NBA stands right now. We've only got a couple of weeks now before the end of the season, so this team needs to make a push. But let's go ahead and take a look at the prospects for this year's draft. We're probably going to go through the first round, and here's what the predictions look like as of right now. You've got the Rockets predicted to get the #1 overall pick. Obviously, these mock drafts could change because we don't know who's going to get the #1 overall pick in any given draft, but these are just initial predictions for where everybody's going to go. And we do have one pretty unanimous #1 overall pick in this draft. I won't say that this is like an insanely strong draft. I think this is a deep draft, but I think for the most part, there's no one absolute star. It's going to start out with Reggie L. Manning from UCLA. He is a 6'6 shooting guard, point guard hybrid, and he has some solid comparisons at 22 years old, though he's a little bit on the older side. But he's got all NBA comparisons, or at minimum a quality starter. He's a good shooter, a good defender, and, just has an all-around decent offensive game. Now, he does have okay perimeter defense, but he could definitely work on that. But as a two-way slasher, Reggie L. Manning's kind of going to give you the Stephon Cassell type gameplay. He's not going to shoot lights out from three, but he's definitely going to provide you with that scoring at the basket. And in an exact reversal of roles, we've got the #2 projected pick in Lawrence Woolridge, a 6'4 point guard out of St. Mary's, who also has all-star potential. But this guy is a deadly shooter. This guy is potentially looking at the best shooter or shot creator in the entire draft. And I'm not talking about just spot-up shooter, because we know guys like Kyle Korver are legendary shooters. This guy can shoot off the dribble. He can make his own shot. He's a very impressive 19-year-old potential prospect. And we've got another Jalen Green. Yes, this is right, but his name is spelled slightly differently. He is 18 years old. He's a young 6'10 forward out of Richmond. Comparisons to Hall of Fame Julius Erving. Obviously, he is going to be very good, but he is an interior threat. This guy, out of this world athleticism. He's going to play good defense with that speed and that, the intangibles that he has, the wingspan that he has, a 7'1" listed wingspan. And he is just going to wow you with athleticism. Can't necessarily shoot it all that well, but right now, he is just going to be, working on that mid-range game, that three-point shooting game. He needs to improve that a little bit for sure. As we're going to get into our first couple centers here, we've got Max Townsend, the 7'2 traditional center. We can kind of group some of these guys together. So Jeffrey Payton and Max Townsend, two centers here from Colorado is Townsend, and Washington for Payton. These guys are two of your more traditional rim protection centers. They're not going to wow you on the offensive side of the things, but they're 7'2". They can obviously have good games on, or 6'11 if you're Jeffrey Payton. They can obviously have a good offensive game in the post. They're not excellent shooters by any means. Unfortunately, for any team that drafts them, they're not getting Wembanyama necessarily. So you have to remember that when you draft those guys. Matthew Dixon is a 6'9 small forward from Missouri State. So a couple of smaller schools here at the top of this draft. He's compared to Glenn Rice a little bit. He's got a lot of potential. He's kind of a prospect project type player. But he's a good defender. He's shown an ability to hit mid-range or closer shots. Definitely needs to work on fine-tuning his offensive game, because it's very raw as of right now. And he does turn over the ball quite frequently for a college player. So Matthew Dixon definitely needs to work on ball security. Next up, we've got no relation to Dennis Rodman, Rudy Rodman, 7'2" center out of Ohio State. This guy is a glass cleaner. He's going to get boards. And comparisons to Andre Drummond, but this guy can score from the perimeter. He's probably, I would say, if you ranked him, about a 70 to 75 three-point shot, which isn't, deadly, but it's good enough for teams to have to respect it. And at 21 years old, it's very, very developable. And 7'2", you can never have too many 7'2" shooters along the perimeter. Following him up with another 7-footer, Leo Thomas, 19 years old, nothing crazy special. Andre Drummond comparisons as well. He's actually from UConn, Donovan Clingan's successor. He comes in as your, kind of like Donovan Clingan. Can't really shoot the ball. Comes in as a rim protector, a rebounder, and he's just going to dominate the paint as a tall, athletic center. Next up, we've got Chris Palmer, a guy I'm really interested in. But unfortunately, we have LaMelo, so our point guard position is really locked up right now, and I wouldn't be using a high pick for a backup point guard. Damon Stoudemire, Mighty Mouse, is the all-star comparison, but Chris Palmer, don't get me wrong, this guy's really good from three. He's a great offensive player, very good athleticism. Needs to work on finishing around the taller defenders at just 6'5", but he does a good job of hitting the threes. And then we've got Damon Reed. At one point in the season was the consensus number one overall pick. He's kind of fell all around from 3 to 10 is the range that he's being predicted. He is just an all-around, very, very good player. Can score at all three levels. Can defend, and at just 19 years old, out of UCLA, he's a 6'10" small forward shooting guard. Damon Reed is a very, very promising prospect, I will say, indeed. And yeah, obviously I'm not going to go in detail on all of these prospects just because I want it to be a briefer prospect summary, and then once they get into the actual NBA, we'll be able to track their success coming onto the court. Donnell Erickson sitting here projected at number 11 out of West Virginia, the 20-year-old small forward. Another Glenn Rice comparison, a good athlete, very good dribbler. He's got, decently progressed handles. He's a very, very heavy potential draft pick, and he doesn't pass like he should. He can be sitting as a bit of a ball hog, but he can hit his shots from the perimeter. That's really all you can ask. Next up, we have another point guard, and Lance Wright the third, a good defender, good all-around floor general. Comparisons to Marcus Smart, so he definitely, coming into the league, needs to work on his three-point shooting. He needs to work on establishing consistency, I would say, is the most important thing with Lance Wright. Next up, we've got 6'8" forward out of Richmond as well, Cameron McCoy, all-NBA comparison to Elton Brand, a good athletic finisher in the paint, gonna protect the rim. Even at his height, he can get blocked, so don't, underestimate his athleticism. Only problem with him is not a good perimeter player. He's not really going to be seen as a guy that can get out there on the perimeter and, get you baskets consistently. Next up, we have a smaller guy, 6'2" point guard Tom Manis. He is pretty simple. He is a sharpshooter, and he's a floor general. One of the better passers in the draft who can also hit those shots. So he's got Rajon Rondo comparisons, but I would still put him over Rondo as far as shooting guard goes. So you don't have to really worry about can he come in and hit the three-point shot, because you already know he can. Definitely not what we're looking for, but we are... I would say that we're not, going to shy away if he's available late in the draft, which is probably not going to happen. But now we're about halfway through. We've got Randolph Mercer, another sharpshooter, all-star potential guy out of Arizona State. He's a little older, but he's a good-looking backup shooting guard potentially, or starting for some teams here. He's a very, very good shooter from mid-range and three-point land. Frankie McDonald, the 6'1" perimeter defender. This guy will lock you down, and yes, he's small, but don't let his height underestimate him, because he is a lockdown defender. Very athletic, very quick hands. Next up, we've got Brevin Stanley, a 6'8" small forward, all-NBA potential as well. A lot of very, as you'll see, not established guys, but a lot of potential prospects, because these guys maybe aren't going to come in and start day one, but they're going to come in and give you a potentially all NBA series or season or career down the road. This guy's out of Texas, though. He's a good developed guy at 20 years old. He's got some IQ that you wouldn't see from guys at his age. He's a good defender. Can, create turnovers and take guys off the dribble a little bit, but he definitely needs to work on his overall offensive game, but he can hit the three at a relatively reliable rate. We've got Jameer Sparks out of Iowa State, the 19-year-old point guard. Good knowledge of what's going on with the court and just running the offense. He's got an elite athletic jump, and is definitely a guy that can mature at 19 years old, but he definitely needs to work on his finesse. He doesn't necessarily have the athleticism to finish over the taller defender, so he's got to work on those finger rolls and the layups around the 7-foot guys there in the paint. Next up, we've got Danny Smith, 22 years old, 6'2" guy, a point guard out of Santa Clara. He's been in college all 4 years, so he is definitely a very, very ready NBA player. But that definitely limits his progression. He's got a good offensive creation. That's why he's compared to Jamal Murray. He can come in, he can create shots. Is he going to develop into an all-star like Jamal Murray? No, but he's probably going to come in very strong as an offensive player. Next up, we've got Dedrick Moncrief playing for UMass. He's all-NBA comparisons as well, 6'2" point guard. A bunch of smaller guards in this draft, but he's very agile. Pretty good athleticism, I would say, especially for his height. Then you've got Mirko Petrovic out of Croatia, a good shooter. One of the better shooting big men, not necessarily from three, but he can stretch out to the mid-range. He's also going to protect the rim there at that power forward position. And we've also got an interesting prospect. Argento Conti is a high flyer, very raw prospect, but he can dunk it. And at 6'8" out of Italy, maybe that's what you're looking for in a late round, first round pick, a guy that has that athleticism that can, maybe not going to come in and be a star, but he can come in and develop a Derrick Jones Jr. type role there for whatever team that drafts him. Finally, and the final 7, you've got Daryl Kelly, a mid-range threat out of Washington. He's got good athleticism, good mid-range scoring, and good post defense. Then you've got Samuel Chambers, inside the arc scorer. He is a 6'9" small forward. All-star comparisons. A good finisher when he gets to the rim, but he does have some trouble getting there in the first place. He has good success at the NBA level if he can translate his game. And he's definitely a very good on-ball defender. We have Abel McDaniel, a 7-foot, 21-year-old center out of Drexel. This guy is just like many of the other centers. There's not a unicorn in this draft, I would say, at least not yet. Still some scouting to do. This guy is going to be, just like the other centers, a traditional back to the basket, protect the rim center, and I still think he's going to have some success in the NBA just because of his athleticism. Next up, you've got Gabe Cole, 21 years old out of Kansas State, a good shooter, a good floor general, really not athletic, so much like the other guy earlier in the draft, he definitely needs to work on his finesse. Then you've got Sam Boner, a interior threat, 6'7" small forward shooting guard out of Texas A&M. He's one of the younger guys at 18 years old, so a very prospect-heavy guy. Not drafting him to come in and be a star at day 1. Next up, we're rounding out the top 30. You've got Lionel Montgomery at 6'9", older, played 5 years in college basketball. He's got all-NBA comparisons out of Washington State. He's going to come in. He's going to contribute immediately as an athletic power forward rim runner who can dunk. He can get around defenders and finish through contact. So don't be surprised if we look at Lionel Montgomery, just because late in the draft we need a second power forward behind Miles Bridges outside of Bryce McGowan's and them. Then we have Austin Butler, one of the better defenders in the draft. He's also a lights-out shooter, so he is an all-around plug-and-play type guy at 22 years old. And finally, at number 30, you've got Ronald Nelson, mid-range specialist out of Iowa State as well. He's got Darius Miles comparison, so he's going to hit shots, he's going to defend. Not necessarily at a high level, but he can do those two things at a relatively consistent level. The rest of these guys, I haven't edited their appearance. I haven't changed them, so later before the draft, I'll probably go over a couple of the second-round picks just to see, if there's anybody necessarily very interesting. And also, At the end of next episode, I'll go around or go over the guys that I'm most interested in, as I'm currently going after a draft board, potentially for where we could get into the draft and what teams we could potentially trade with. So that is the end of our draft prospect outlook number 1. If you did enjoy this one, or if you'd like to see, have any suggestions, if you'd like to see this implemented into a regular episode, I would definitely be interested in that. But at the end of the day, I kind of like having them separate, so this can kind of function as its own video. If you're not interested in it, you don't have to watch it. If you are interested in the draft side of things, you can come check this video out without having to worry about, you know, it lasting 45 minutes. It's just a quick 20-minute video, and in the future, I'm sure I'll be able to get them down to 10 minutes as well. But thank you all for watching this one. If you did enjoy, hit the like button, and I will catch each and every one of you next time when we take on the Cleveland Cavaliers here in the Charlotte Hornets MyNBA series. Have a great day, everybody.